the Mindset Athlete Podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. I'm a two-time Paralympian and owner of James Robert Fitness, which is an online training, nutrition and mindset coaching business. First of all, I'd like to thank Lauren Williams for suggesting this quote to the show. An athlete is a mindset. It's how you prepare, think and execute. Not because of some elite status or physical stature. Anybody can be an athlete. By Chris Harth. And each week on the Mindset Athlete, we like to bring you inspirational athletes, a message, or experts talking about human optimization to teach you how to change your perception of your mindset and become 1% better. And on today's show, I've got Aren Deu, a full-time property investor, part-time podcaster and personal trainer. He is someone who has had to deal with adversity and anxiety the majority of his life. Forced into careers he had no desire to even be part of, he is now financially free to control his own life and to pursue his own passion projects. The first is Find Your Voice podcast, which he shares stories of adversities from other people in the hope that listeners can take away the messages and change their own lives by regaining control of it, eliminating excuses and growing their mindset. An advocate for mental health and the importance of physical health too, he has recently continued his entrepreneurial journey with his wife in their new venture, HealthXcel. HealthXcel is an empowering brand aimed to educate you daily through its superfood blends, nutritional plans, gym programs, and so much more. They're striving to make as many lives not only happier each and every day, but educating them along the way by putting the odds in their favour through their superfood blend products and content. So welcome on to the show, Aren.
Thank you for having me, mate. It's a pleasure to be here.
So beyond, and it's a privilege to have you on as well, beyond the initial introduction I've given you, what little nugget would you like to share additionally to my audience?
Yeah, absolutely. So my journey, as you probably mentioned in the introduction, it's quite unorthodox. I've done quite a few different things. I've been in construction, boxing, social work, podcasting. And for me, it is literally the title of my own podcast, Find Your Voice, which you came on and you shared an incredible episode, by the way, and it is literally just finding your way in life. So people talk a lot about purpose. That's normally a common thing. What's your purpose? What's your why? And I always feel like we kind of develop that as we go through life, and providing that we can get that as close to our sort of moral compass as we kind of walk through life, and then that's where really our purpose kind of makes sense. So for me now, the podcasting thing, although it's not monetizing, although I haven't even thought about that aspect of it, I feel like that's my purpose because I'm able to bring impact. I'm able to affect people's lives through the interviews with people like yourself or other people that come on. I'm also finding my voice. I'm coming out of my comfort zone to be a guest on a show like your show. It was initially something I'd never think about. I'd always be like, nah, that's not for me. We're doing a video recording. I've only just started video recording, I think it was about December time. So even that was for somebody who's suffered with anxiety most of their life, it was very, very difficult. So what I want to try and do is encourage people through the stories that I bring on and through my own sort of action on a daily basis that you only got to get better 1% a day, which is your tagline, isn't it? It's on your thing as well. So that's probably what I'd add.
What obviously, Aren, I'll pose this from two perspectives now. Be it if we touch on the first point with Find Your Voice as a podcast, do you think, obviously, be it athlete or anybody, entrepreneur or anybody in the general populace, do you think it's easier now to give your own voice across in terms of your own opinions and using social media as that platform? Absolutely. And I mean constructively, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things, and it's probably an imposter syndrome, which we all go through, was when you get people who are perceived or actually are doing amazing in life, we tend to put ourselves lower and we think, oh, maybe my thoughts or my perspective on this isn't worth it. But what you tend to do is when you strip everyone back and you just look at their values and who they are as people, we're all pretty much just normal human beings. Some of us, however, have just somehow focused in on an aspect and just focused on being 1% better every single day. For example, yourself, we spoke about it in terms of your athlete mindset, because I'm always interested with the top operators. And I'm thinking, how do you get to where you're getting through all that, them obstacles, through all that hardship and stuff? And it is a passion. It becomes a purpose. And I've recognized myself in anything I've really put my mind to, I can improve on it. And I truly believe that anyone listening to this, whatever goal you have in life, over a long enough period of time, if you're willing to execute and just keep improving your skill set, then your voice will be worth hearing. And one thing I want to do is not kind of only say my voice as the final product in 10 years time, when Find Your Voice, for example, is what it is, or my property business is what it is. I want to show the whole journey. So somebody can look back and say, he sounded quite nervous there, or he messed up his words here. And I'll be like, well, that's part of the journey. But that's why now, hopefully in 10, 15 years time, I sound a little bit better. I'm a little bit more clearer with my answers. So that's kind of what I want to say in terms of just answering your question there.
Well, so I think it's a learning process in terms of that. And obviously this is something that I've been on shows more recently as we're recording this week. And this is something I didn't actually probably mention in your show. Ultimately, I think it goes a step further than a passion, purpose. I think it's belief. It's ultimately, I think in an athlete's mindset, and this is something you can nick as well, would be obviously they have a belief in terms of what I believe to be right. And you'll listen to naysayers, but obviously if it's not productive, you'll dismiss it. It's like, that doesn't serve a purpose. It's not aligned with my belief system, and that you could relate that to anything in terms of, like negative thinking versus positive thinking. When you are obviously in that mindset of positivity, you'll very much be at one with being able to, most of the time, be able to dismiss those negative thoughts. And I was reading somewhere, I think it was last week in Men's Health, which a sports psychologist talking about neutral state of thinking, which is looking at, and I'm going to contextualize this answer a little bit, in terms of looking at it specifically as what's happened in the past is done. You can't do anything about it. Be it if it's obviously normally it'd be negative in a sporting sense, you're losing. That's gone. Don't dwell upon it. Focus in the moment, and obviously execute stuff going forward. And it's easier said than done, but I think it's more realistic than, in terms of people spouting about positive thinking all the time, because for some people, it's an unrealistic goal to even attain because they don't see it working. The stuff that I've used to exemplify that is the film Cool Runnings, in terms of affirmation from that basis, so people can picture. Absolutely. I was seeing probably 99% of my audience and people on yours would have seen that film at least once and can picture what I'm talking about right here and now, in terms of that's positive thinking right here in the here and now. But I think for some people, shouting out into a mirror doesn't always. I did it when I was anxious last year. I was reciting that in the car inside my head, but for other people, that'd be even more difficult. So I think this neutral state of thinking, I don't think it's anything new, but obviously it's somebody putting it to the fore and obviously making it a little bit more mainstream. And I think that's most where people are anyway. But I think coming back to obviously my second question I wanted to ask you, in terms of that anxiety state, do you think it's built on the fear of public speaking then? For yours more specifically?
Did you just say public speaking? It just cut out there.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's weird. I've been doing a lot of self-work in terms of finding when it actually happened. When did I become this anxious person, this shy person in the room? And it actually stemmed around the age of 11. So it was never public speaking. I was very confident as a child. I was in the school football team, younger than anyone else. I was in the choir, which was a completely diverse thing. I would do pretty much everything. I was like the most popular kid. When I went to secondary school, I went to a grammar school. So my parents forced me into the academic route because I could look at things and I could almost instantly remember them growing up before I started drinking and my brain cells got affected. So because of that, I went to grammar school where I became from being the top at everything to almost the bottom, because these people they've been working their whole lives for grammar school. I applied for grammar school 2 months before the deadline. So I did last minute tutoring, but I still got in. And so when I went there, it really affected my confidence a lot. And then what would happen is, and this is maybe just the way parenting and the people around me I was never good enough. So I would always come home and I'd try my ass off. I've always tried to work my ass off wherever I can. And it was never good enough. And that, for me, I was probably the person who needed the arm around the shoulder. I really struggled with it. And touching on what you mentioned earlier, like the belief stuff, I didn't have that belief. I didn't have a blueprint in my life. I never had no one in my family who had gone on to university and got a degree or a master's. I was the first one. So at that point, I was thinking, am I good enough? Am I capable enough of becoming who I need to become? And it just consumed me. And I haven't done enough work throughout the subsequent years, but it's one of the most debilitating things in the world. And I don't wish it upon anyone. At the same time, I'm grateful that I've owned it and I share it, because as a result of it, it's helped me obviously connect with people like yourselves, get onto this podcast, share my own podcast. And just using your belief thing again, which I think was a brilliant point, by the way, I try and bring people on who have a blueprint of going through adversity, suffering with something, but then coming out the other side. So then the person listening doesn't have an excuse. I want to try and take away every single person's excuse, a bit like myself. So I know there's people on stage or people doing the things that I want to do who may be shy, who may have been anxious, who may not want to stand on the stage. And I'm thinking, well, if they can do it, why can't I do it? I'm very able-bodied, I'm very lucky. I'm able to talk. I'm able to have this conversation, coherently listen. And I think sometimes we take that for granted. So in terms of just moving forward, anxiety still sits with me. It sits with me on a daily basis, but I'm very, very fortunate that when you have that fight, flight, freeze, appease, or befriend kind of moment, I tend to fight. That's always been in my nature. And I'm very grateful for that, because if I'd froze, maybe I wouldn't be a podcast host. Maybe I wouldn't be in property or doing the things that I'm doing. So that's all I encourage people, is just try and see those blueprints, have that belief. If you don't have that natural mindset that, hold on, I don't need to listen to what you're saying, I'm already going to make it. Just look for episodes like this. Look for other people. Look for your idols, whoever they are. Read their books, follow their stories, and just recognize that it's not all about their glory. You need to look at their story. And within that story, you're going to find the trials, the tribulations that we've all been through. We all experience on a daily basis. But the difference is they chose to accept that and then move forward from it.
I think you mentioned a great point there in terms of people thinking that they're going to make it. Ultimately, that's sabotage in itself, because you're kind of having been in a state of, I can't try to think of the word, an irrational state, because ultimately you're going to face adversity. You mentioned me. I thought the sunshine out my backside in sport, in terms of, it wasn't all, I paint it as a wonderful picture. It wasn't all sunshine and roses in terms, even sport had its own stresses. So I know athletes listening to that can agree with that, because they know it, they live it, and they breathe it. I think it's the outside perspective looking in. They assume everything is perfect. It's like, yes, I'm doing something that I enjoy. It's passionate, but there is still ultimate overall stress in terms of being cut from a team, be it whatever stage of that career, being dropped, the financial implications that have, be it doesn't matter what state, be it professional, if it's in the North America, or it's lottery funding in the UK, that is probably weighing on, I would say, maybe the middle of the road athlete to somebody that's borderline, probably somebody that's at the top who's got the gold medal, maybe not so much. And they're probably still looking over their shoulder as, the next up and coming person. But in terms of being realistic that you're going to make it, if you've not faced adversity yet, it's just around the corner.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great point.
So I think people need to be a little bit more realistic in terms of, yes, you've not faced any hardship, struggle, or difficulty yet, but life's waiting for you.
Absolutely. Life's going to get us at some stage. That's why initially, I suppose adversity for many of us, some of you who may not have been through it, I used to think you were fortunate. Now I think actually that's quite unfortunate, because it's when adversity strikes, that's when you're able to develop your gift. You're able to build resilience. You're able to move forward in whatever you want to do. And I suppose maybe that was me in a nutshell. Up until the age of 11, everything I touched was gold. I could literally do my homework in 3 seconds, because I'd remember a script and I'm off playing football straight away. Mm-hmm. I'm in the football team as a year. I think I was 8 years old in a year 11 football team, which was unheard of. I was tiny, but I was just picking up things very, very easily. I did gymnastics. Everything just worked for me until adversity hit. Now, there's obviously a point when that adversity hit that I crumbled as well. So I did struggle for a lot of years with self-doubt and thinking I wasn't good enough, for example, moving forward. But in hindsight now, when I reflect, I embrace all these adversities that come in my way. When I see people die around me, and I've had a lot of adversity, which kind of made me start Find Your Voice, to be honest, because it changed my whole perception on what's important in life. and moving forward, I've just become stronger, and I'll go through the same circumstance in a similar way, but it doesn't affect me the same way because I've already learned how to deal with it somewhere else, and I'm just so much stronger. So now, rather than dealing with level 1 problems, I'm dealing with level 5 or level 6 problems, and I'm excited to learn the level 10 problems. I know when I have it, I'm going to freak out, and I'm going to think, what's going on here? I'm going to get overwhelmed. I'll still get stressed. I'll get anxious. But then I also know that I can get over it. Providing it doesn't kill me, there's an opportunity for me to get over it.
And Aaron, you mentioned there that obviously you had element of not having a shoulder to put around your support. Is it something that you, in later years, that you've discussed that with your parents?
I haven't, no. So I'm going on a podcast. It's about mental health, and I actually had to write a biography in terms of what my story was. And when I wrote it, it was almost therapeutic, and like I was journaling it because I was explaining a bit about my life. And as I wrote it, I mentioned that exact point that I've just mentioned to yourself, and it struck a chord with me. I was like, oh my God, that was the moment where I really started to struggle. It was that, I suppose, relationship with my dad. In my head, it was always me trying to make sure that I make him proud and make sure that I get his approval, basically. And throughout life, I never really felt I got that. And it was up until about probably the age of 25, 26, where I didn't need his approval anymore. I got it. So it was weird because I was like, if only you had given it me earlier, maybe I would have been a little bit more proactive and I would have done better things. But again, it taught me a lot that I had to kind of get my own approval first and foremost, if that makes sense. Because I'm sure many of us go through life and we're looking for that one person's nod of approval. And sometimes you might not get that. I'm very grateful that my parents are both loving parents. There's no animosity or anything between like me and my parents. They raised me the best way they knew that they could raise me. For my dad, I think it was tough love. I think it was the fact that if you put an arm around me, I would have quit. I might have quit. I can't go back in hindsight and say anything. So I believe he did everything for the right reasons. I just know that now, knowing my personality, maybe an arm around the shoulder or at least you tried kind of thing would have just helped me that little bit more and probably made me less anxious.
And I think you can go probably a step further. And this is somebody I'd been on their show recently. They were saying, I think it was, when did I go on his show? Yesterday, as we were recording this. And he was talking about people being able to push my buttons in terms of be able to get the best out of you. And he was saying, from listening to my answers, he put it down to, doubt, pushing that button in terms of if we believe you can't do it, you then obviously overturn it to the opposite way and use it as motivation and thinking, okay. I think I still do to some extent nowadays and look, well, people be skeptical of, and I think it's more problematic in this day and age with stuff being online. So people are skeptical because they've been hurt, they've been manipulated, and they've to a certain extent been taken advantage of. So people are more guarded in terms of, well, that looks too good to be true. And I think when you are vulnerable and kind of transparent, I think they look to be a little bit more open with it. Some maybe not so because they're dealing with something that even deeper, or they still don't believe it. And it's like, well, okay, ultimately you can't change somebody's opinion from that basis. But it was interesting to hear that obviously somebody saying, oh, that's your catalyst to want to evolve. I think obviously in moving over into the business sense, that's dangerous because there's competition and you've got to be careful how you use it outside of a sporting realm. Obviously it's going to, you kind of operate in a sense of negativity in sport because it gets the best out. So you need to be kind of Jekyll and Hyde, Beauty and the Beast, kind of, you need to operate in the darkness to be able to get the best out of yourself. Whereas I think in the real world, I think the opposite needs to be the case. You need to be a little bit more uplifting and look at being more positive, more so than being in the middle or being, there's enough negativity in the world than you would add in additionally to that.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think all of them are probably good in their own way. So it's always good to have that tool set in terms of, I've done personal training for about eight or 9 years to fund my way through university when I went back second time. And I took those lessons that I've learned and the coaches that I was around. I was grateful to be around Bob Dylan, who's a UK, a Great Britain coach. He's coached like Anthony Joshua, some of the greatest people. I've trained under mixed martial artists, European champions and stuff. So I'd always look at people and think, how do they teach people? How do they coach people and try and be the best that I can be? So when I work with someone, sometimes it is a kick up the arse. Get yourself into gear. You really need to start moving forward. You're just being lazy. But then sometimes I can see that person's tired. Maybe they've had a stressful day. Maybe they haven't eaten right. And then it's okay, let's just try and just be a little bit better than yesterday. Let's just try and get some progress out of it. And I think that obviously helped my coaching and taking all those things in terms of knowing different leadership styles as well. Massively helped. That helped me in corporate world when I used to work as a project manager. Some people, if I'm not on their case, they're not going to do the work. And I had to do that. And I didn't really like that. It wasn't my natural personality. Whereas some people, it's the more of the disappointment thing, or you just, you want to pull on their heartstrings maybe a little bit, or the emotional side to get them to move forward as well. So it's always good having those. But I think as individuals, we need to recognize what's the thing that's going to help us 80% of the time. Because 10% of the time, you give me a kick up the arse. I'm in the gym and I'm working out and I'm trying as hard as I can. But for the other 80%, I don't want to hear that, because it's just going to make me almost rebel. So I think having all of those, at least in your arsenal, will help you.
I think ultimately it's looking at the priorities and your purpose. I think I was talking to a gentleman last week about it. He'd lost his mojo or motivation for other people. And I was just talking to him. Yeah. Well, obviously you've been doing sport for 25 years. He said it was an obsession. I didn't say that. I was saying probably mine was to a certain degree so I could relate. So what's it going to take for the gym to be the same thing? I'm just talking to him, just giving ideas and solutions. Like, it's given me that fire to I need to probe him and say, did you go to the gym that day? If you didn't, that's fair enough. It's obviously actions speak louder than words, and everybody knows that. But it gave me the impetus to say, to kind of say, it doesn't matter even if you sign up or not to work with me. I've given you the tools to kind of go ahead, and you've kind of got that fire relit in you inside to, well, everything that I put in front of me, those are excuses. I need to find what is the exact motivator or belief in terms of what do I want to do? Why do I want to get into the gym? It could be health related. It could be being there long term for your kids or grandkids. It's delving deeper into that, as opposed to, as you know, working within that field in fitness. The 6-pack, getting fitter, getting leaner. That's not going to do anything. For some people it will, but for the majority that's not going to work. It's not deep enough. Not enough emotive connection.
I agree. I think that's a great point. Just on the 6-pack thing as well. So I got a 6-pack as a result of just hard work and dedication. Never in a million years did I ever want a 6-pack. Did I care about a 6-pack? I was never really conscious about my appearance to ever worry about it. And it's funny you mentioned that point. So how I got that was training 3 times a day for 7.5 weeks, starving myself because I knew nothing about nutrition, by the way. I was boxing, doing weight training, doing sprints. I lost an incredible amount of weight. I think I lost 42 pounds in 7.5 weeks. I had this 6-pack, but I had this one quote. And that quote was almost like a kick up the arse, I suppose, for me saying to my dad. And it was, I do it because I can because I want to because you said I couldn't. And I just remember that was my mantra, and I had it there for 7.5 weeks. And indirectly, I was using negative comments in my head to fuel me, even though I'm not that kind of person. It got me to the result, but again, the 6-pack wasn't the thing. I was very proud of what I achieved in that time, because I think it was the hardest I probably ever trained over a set period of time. But yeah, it's interesting. It was a deeper reason basically for me doing that.
But do you think it can become a compulsion then, in terms of training that much?
Absolutely. I come at a time where I had a degree. I'd done everything. I ticked off everything that my parents had asked me to do. And I wanted to box at 17, and I was picked up by great coaches saying I could be very, very good. 8 years later, I'm not very good. I'm overweight. I've lost a lot of my natural ability, and I knew that I only had certain skill sets. So I had to kind of prove, I suppose, other people wrong and myself right as well in that moment. And I wanted to make sure there wasn't one excuse that somebody could say, well, actually, you never trained that day, or you ate a packet of crisps that day or something. And, I didn't know much about nutrition. I stuck to 1,800 calories, which isn't a lot of calories when you're training 3 times a day. I was anemic. I used to pass out randomly and not understand what was going on, but I'd still make sure I was training 20 to 21 times a week. And I was really putting my life on the line. And yeah, I looked absolutely shredded. I wasn't internally in a great place. It was a complete obsession. And I know now in hindsight, I'd never do that, because one of the things I preach in training is sustainability. Because without sustainability, there's no consistency and you're going to get no results, basically.
But do you think, from the nutritional perspective, do you think, as a general populace, when people don't know about nutrition, they're easily, I won't say manipulated, but they don't know from a knowledge perspective the pros and cons of doing certain diets and what impact that's going to have on them long term?
Yeah, absolutely. Everything's about how well you market it, I think, today. I hate fad diets. I don't even like the word diet. I think it's about creating something that fits your lifestyle. If you're an athlete, you need to be eating in a specific way. But I think anything that has diet, it has a connotation of a kind of a start and a finish to it, and set rules. So what I always try and work with my clients, and what I do myself, because I suffered with binge eating for about 3 years and I had to get hypnosis for it. It really affected me, like in my mental health as well. Is I create a diet now where I will, if for example you're eating 2,000 calories, the first 1,000 or 1,500 is nutrient dense foods. It's not very calorific foods. It's foods to give you the energy, so your mind's right, your body's right, you're feeling right, so you're able to have that output where you need it. The other 500 is pretty much what you want. Now, I'm not saying that's the greatest idea in the world, but for me, having suffered with binge eating for the last 6-7 years, I haven't binged once, because I'll have a pizza when I want to. I'll have 4 packs of crisps. I'll have 3 bars of chocolates. But the rest of my calories are all accounted for. And I'm training pretty much every day as well. And that's sustainability for me. That keeps my mind in a good place, because there's no point going for that 6-pack or training if your mind's not right and you're not happy. The whole point is happiness in this journey. So there's a lot of ill information out there. I always try and preach that, but people don't believe it. People think they have one slice of pizza, they're going to instantly get fat. And that's what it's scaremongering. It's all these fad diets. And I'm like, you're not. It's a piece of bread. It's got a couple of layers on it. Yeah, it's not the greatest thing in the world, but at the same time, it's not that bad either.
I think it's, obviously I'm on similar wavelengths in terms of that from where I like to educate people as well. But I think people are skeptical because it's like, well, how can I lose weight and still eat the foods that I enjoy? It's like, well, that's me to teach you how to learn to be able to better manage things. Obviously, for some people, it's going to take longer than others. But ultimately, what is now become a diet is all about restriction. There's no difference between one of them. I think when people say, is this one better than the other? It's like, ultimately, no, because they're all restrictive and they're only on a short-term fix in terms of, yes, it will. I'm not saying they're not going to work, because they will, ultimately, if you do them right. But have we got to the root cause? No. In terms of why are you acting in that way? In terms of, be it habit, behavior, previous experience in life, be it childhood, school, etc., be it whatever circumstance that may have put you in that position of routinely looking at food as a way out, be it, emotional eating, binge eating, coping mechanism, which in a sense would encompass all of them. Why is that the case? And I look to probe people long before I even speak to them. Where do you want to be in? Where do you want to be in 3 to 6 months? What does it look? Where does your vision or mission statement look like for you? Ultimately, long term, an athlete can use that the same way in terms of, okay, we look at the results. Let's dissect the process. What do you want to do from the small cadences to be able to improve? I glossed over the fact of that and lost sight of that at times. In hindsight, it'd be nice to go back and be able to change that, but I can't, because I was focused on the result too much. And sometimes you need to take that step back and kind of look at the bigger picture. And this is the same for everybody. What ultimately do you want to be able to change long term, and look at it like that? Like you said, like it's a lifestyle. When people say to me, well, how are you able to eat this way? It's hardwired into me from about 8 years old. Yes, I've deviated off that because of the work commitments. When I worked in education, I was looking for that quick fix energy, because you were most of the time always run down. That's why I think for me as a coach now, it's very easy if somebody comes in from the teaching profession. I can push every single button because I've worked in that career. It's like, do you suffer with this? And the primary one is even easier, but because obviously you put it related back to the kids. But if they're working in secondary school, it's like, is this okay? Bop, bop, bop. I won't even tell you I've worked in that. If you've been on my content on my Facebook longer, you'd have seen it. But if you're new in, you wouldn't have known I worked in that profession. So it's very much, I'm able to go even deeper in terms of, the emotional state. Well, is your job impacting on your lifestyle as well? And then some people probably say no, but it's like, well, okay, let me probe a bit further then, because I don't believe you. And looking at it from this base, and same with on the athletic field.
Absolutely.
Is stresses in the classroom or at home impacting on your performance? You need to look at things like that, be it yours with your parents.
Yeah, absolutely.
That could have had an impact on nutrition and overall well-being, because in a nutshell, you were saying, am I good enough? Obviously, you go a step further now with social media. Teenagers are trying to compare themselves to what they see on Instagram.
It's a scary place. It's one thing that I try and be as authentic and raw with it. I actually released an episode today, well, it's coming out tomorrow, on perfectionism, because everyone's trying to chase this, being perfect, and it's not about that. It's about progress. And like you said, hindsight, it's a wonderful thing. We learn from it. And I'm trying to just tell people, like, even myself, I had somebody reach out saying, "Oh, you're brilliant now. You're over anxiety. You sound amazing on a podcast." I'm like, mate, I've been editing it for 4 hours. I've had to change it because I'm conscious that if somebody comes onto my podcast and they hear me umming and ahhing, it's going to be a problem. And I still have those insecurities and those problems. And it was only when I recorded this episode, this morning, I was like, I need to stop that. It needs to just be 100% myself. And that's my own thing. And I'm always on this self-development journey. I openly say I'm trying to find my own voice. And I was like, I'm going to leave it all in there. And if somebody doesn't want to tune in because I sniff too much, or I've always got a cold, or I say the wrong words, that's not my audience. That's not the people I want to be representing. But at least it's true. And then people can see that. You may be able to relate with my story or my guest story, like yourselves. And then hopefully they'll find that resonating message, something that they can move forward in their life as well. So yeah, it's a great point.
Well, you probably heard me today do it. It's, what am I thinking from that word perspective? I do it. I leave it. It's all. The only things I will edit, and I'll be completely honest with people listening on this particular episode, because they won't know, is if it's a massive long pause, and that's it. Be it, I don't want to put the guest in a position where people will think that, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. It'd be okay. I've caught them off guard with that particular question. I'll condense it a little bit to take out that momentary pause. If you watch in the video, in a video format, the pause wouldn't be as bad, because you can see the person thinking. Whereas when you only hear the audio, you're thinking, okay, I've obviously stumped somebody, because you can hear it's like, oh no, I don't, and then they have to go and think about it. But I think it's going away from. If you look at YouTube, is a massive example of copy and editing, where it kind of jolts.
Absolutely.
I think people are starting to become conscious. Well, okay, that's a mistake. And I think some I've watched, it'd be like 10 times in a video, thinking, what's wrong with you've made a gaffe of something, or a mistake, or a blooper.
Absolutely.
I've even shared that. I did a testimonial for somebody. And I botched it up 5 times before I got the right one. And I shared it, and I tagged him in. These are the ones previously. I think I swore in one, because I tried to record it here, and I forgot it starts recording straight away. I was like, oh, I don't want to edit that. There you go, bin that one. And then I moved it onto a different app that I've got on the Mac. Made mistakes on that one, and I finally got it right. But I laugh and joke about it, and I made a post about it. In terms of, it is a form of the procrastination and perfectionism are closely linked. So you've either got one or the other. And if you got the two together, it's even worse, going simultaneously. But I think I was honest in terms of that post, because I said, I think 6 months ago, that wouldn't have seen the light. That would have gone straight in the trash. You would never have seen the data. It's like, here you go. This is the mistake. The finished one that's perfect, I've obviously sent to the person that needs it. But these are the mistakes. These are the bloopers. I'm quite happy to kind of show. And people, I kind of ask, which is your favorite? And people say, oh, the one that's swearing. But that isn't out of character, because I will curse occasionally. It doesn't happen very often. I know in live stuff is more difficult because radio, you're not allowed to swear on live air. And I think what we went Monday, I went on a local radio station, nearly did it. It would have had a better, if I would have been allowed to say it, it had a greater impact by what I was saying. But I was thinking, no, James, you can't say this word that you want to come out your mouth. Pick something else. And then obviously managed to catch myself, say something that wasn't a swear word. And then I said to those after, I nearly swore. It was like that close. And then it's never happened before. So I think it was that you're up here, you're having your point to say, and then you think, oh no, the word I want to say cannot come out, and use something. But I think, and he was saying, guess he said it in the past, they've not been able to stop themselves in terms of they've said what's in their mind. Oh, this one is blah blah blah. I can't remember what it's only like a British swear word because it's a British person, but it was really, they had to kind of say, unfortunately, we have to go to the break, and I'm going to have to ask you to leave, because he said it was multiple times. So they obviously weren't listening to their prompt. But I think giving people a perspective of that, and I think giving something of value now to the audience and the listeners, is if that's normal to yourself to be like that, and be, obviously, if it's not too explicit, be that, because that's you being your true self, in terms of people are going to gravitate towards that, and you're going to alienate some people, but that's good, because you're in that middle ground to be able to polarize people in one direction or the other, and then you are, in a sense, being your true self. You're happy with yourself, like you said, and you're not putting a mask on to try and please everybody.
Absolutely. No, I think that's a great point. I think the bloopers thing made me laugh because I've created a bloopers reel myself now. And I think what I'm going to do, because the reason sometimes I chop it is because you can get really cool moments where you can just switch from one angle to another. And I do a lot of chop changing. It's not necessarily my mistakes, or sometimes I'll say a mistake and I'll do like a funky effect on it. But bloopers now, what I'm going to start doing is putting them at the end of every YouTube video, or just have a separate video, because again, like yourself, it's a self-reflection journey for myself. I recognize, you mentioned it today, I've probably heard it about 3 or 4 times just this week alone, perfectionism and procrastination. And I need to stop that. I want to be that person who says what they do and do what they say. So for now, you're going to see all of my bloopers, all of that stuff where I mess up and I say words. I don't swear that much, luckily, but I do a lot of like stupid things. And sometimes I'll say words that even when I'm listening back afterwards, I'm like, what the hell did I just say? Like, I'll mix 3 or 4 words together, especially when I get excited. I start like speaking quicker.
Just do like I do then, Aaron. I say I've made up a word and that's it, and move on. I don't think this is a word, but I'll say it anyway. And then you never know, it might end up in the dictionary.
I'm going to try that one, mate. I love that.
And just do that one. You just go, because I think if you speak to be like the older generation, they'll say, well, that wasn't a word 5-10 years ago. And Pete, I think, trying to think of one. I'm not trying to go too much from tangent. Like hospitalization, that's not a word. It's an Americanization, but it's become into the English language. And I think ultimately, that's where people need to be. It's like not afraid of your bloopers. Obviously, you want to make it as clean cut as possible from a professional standpoint. But I think coming on this point where you mentioned in terms of trying to steer away from procrastination and perfectionism, you won't know in terms of, I think, from a perfectionist standpoint till you put it out there. If you don't put it out there, obviously that's procrastination because it's sitting on a shelf. And I think you are only inevitably hurting yourself because you don't know what the engagement's going to be like, or that you can't gauge it. It's like, well, you might as well put it out there. That's version 1. You change it. I put out something more recently because I more specifically work more with the amputee community, and it's done better than I expected. And I've had people say, have you received it yet? It's like, come on, hang on a second. I didn't expect it to explode like it has done. Can you not have a bit of patience in terms of, I think I was expecting probably like 10, 15 people wanted it. And I think it's upwards of 50. So it's, what's that, about 3 times as many people as I thought, and it's still day by day. Occasionally, on my feed alone, there's somebody new every day. So thinking, bear with me. Let's have a little bit of patience, be a little bit old school thinking of thinking it's coming, but bear with me. And obviously we probably, well, we're in a society that's completely the opposite anyway, but that's a different subject altogether. But obviously we can have a thing at a click of the button. I'm not Amazon, so you can't have it right now. And it's a process to be able to see if and I'll be transparent with everybody, to see if maybe the working with me would be a better course of action than the book. Because ultimately, yes, the book will work, but working with me as in a group setting or a one-to-one might get you that result quicker. And somebody actually asked me, will I still, obviously by that behind the scenes, will I get my book? Yeah, but I'll be transparent with you. If I think maybe by having to ask you a few questions, the alternative might be a better suit. If it's not, that's fair enough, and you'll still get the book. But that's the first person to kind of get me to be like really, really transparent to, well, what are you doing with these questions? Like, I'm not gonna, I could lie, but I don't feel it ethically or morally proper to do that. This is the reason why I'm asking you these questions, and ultimately we'll go from there. I know some have been, quick. Nope, I don't like these questions being asked. I just want them. Okay, here you go. That's an issue in itself, because obviously you don't want to open up. We can't fix the actual problem because you're not wanting to be vulnerable enough to solve the problem. But it's not for me to say when and where people are in the right place to start. Only you as the individual know that, and I think I've got better at that as time goes. So if it's not the right time, it's fair enough. I'll back off, and you can come to me or ask questions. The door's always open, and be like that. But obviously, moving on, my penultimate question to you, Aren, then is, if you had to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive, who would that be and why?
I'm a United fan. I'm a big football fan. So it'd probably be Cristiano Ronaldo. I know probably he made his stuff in Madrid, but I feel that as a character, in terms of his mental strength and stuff, he made it at Man United. That's kind of our claim as a Man United fan. And more so, you hear about his story and stuff and how he's perceived online, but then you see the stuff behind him. I admire, obviously, his technical ability, his physical prowess, and all the stuff he does on the field. But I think it's that mindset aspect of him I find incredible. I think when he came back from one of the Euros, when he had an altercation with Wayne Rooney, I'm not sure if anyone's following football, and he come back into a team is very hostile for him, especially as British fans are very, very passionate. Sometimes we get overexcited. And he came in and he almost had the greatest season of his life. And then he's just continued to push the boundaries. And when you see somebody at that level who's already achieved probably his wildest dreams, he's done everything he wants to, just continue to move forward and forward, that amazes me. And I think obviously I'm cheating a little bit here, but to add a second person is somebody who I don't follow massively, but obviously because of the horrific incident that happened this week, Kobe Bryant. He's somebody who the next day I was so emotional the next day. I mean, the world stood still. And obviously there's people who adore him far and beyond. But he had times in my life when I was training or when I was exercising, I always pull on certain people, and I'll always have listened to his interviews. And one of the things I'd always say from him is one of the hardest workers in the room, literally, a bit like The Rock. And when I have these role models, these blueprints that we spoke about earlier, there are so many sessions I can remember just having Kobe Bryant, some of his words or some of his sayings in the back of my head that have got me through it. So it almost felt like I lost a mentor there as well. And I just think it's not about necessarily being an athlete, but if you can take these traits that these regular people have, that perseverance, that belief that you mentioned, and then just keep going. And I just think it's incredible, especially when things aren't always going well as well. So cheating a little bit there, but I'd probably say both those two people.
And I think I put that into context, obviously, the Cristiano Ronaldo one, because obviously, well, me being a United fan as well, he was probably hated before he come back, but then obviously brought in, well, he's still one of ours. Yeah. And then from a Premier League standpoint, he was hated by everybody else. So I think he was looking to give back to, obviously, the belief that the United fans have instilled kind of by supporting him, and obviously kind of go against the naysayers, like, well, I don't care what you say, and I'm going to obviously prove prove you wrong and show my ability. So my final question to you, Aren, then on that note, is if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about today into one sentence for people to take away, and this is the question I mentioned earlier in the episode, what would it be?
Right. Bit of a difficult one, but I think we've touched on some amazing conversational points. I think I just want to encourage people to listen to ourselves, listen to how we've both conducted ourselves and the flaws that we've mentioned, the hindsight stuff that we've spoken about, perfectionism, procrastination and everything, and just recognize your own gifts and take it as encouragement that there's definitely a blueprint out there, whether it's Cristiano Ronaldo, Kobe Bryant, James Roberts, or even myself on a lower athletic pedestal, if that's what we want to call it, and just recognize that if the blueprint's out there, then you definitely have, over a long enough period of time, as I always say, the ability to achieve whatever it is that you want to achieve.
So Aren, once again, thanks for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate it.
It's been my absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
If you like this episode, please do share it with your friends, and do let Aren and I know what you thought of the episode by tagging us over on Instagram at Find Your Voice Podcast and at James O Roberts 11. And again, you can do the same on Twitter and Facebook. And additionally, if you had any questions, don't hesitate to shoot them over as well. And finally, don't forget to check out Aren's podcast, Find Your Voice, as well as HealthXcel, which I will link in the description. Also, don't forget to check out my free content at fitamputee.co.uk and click on the tab Resources. But also not forget, and I've also started a new Facebook group, especially for the podcast, which you can find by typing in The Mindset Athlete. And one especially for the amputees listening. I've also recently created a Facebook group called The Amputee Coach, Fitness and Nutrition for Amputees, to help you lose 10 to 30 pounds. So make sure to check that out. The links will be in the description. You can find all the show notes at mindsetgame.lipson.com under the category General. So once again, thanks for listening, and I'll catch you next week for another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast.